2016, Donald Trump ran on the promise of overturning Roe. As president, he handpicked 3 Supreme Court justices who cast the deciding vote. And Trump continues to brag about being the person responsible for killing Roe and unleashing extreme abortion bans across the country. Something he calls, quote, a beautiful thing to watch. But if Trump gets reelected, and he won't, he would go even further. His Extreme Project 2025. His agenda includes banning abortion nationally, all 50 states, with or without the help of Congress, restricting access to contraception, forcing states to monitor and report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Can you think of anything darker or more chilling? It would give Trump complete control over women and our personal choices, but we can stop him. And the way to do that is to elect Vice President Kamala Harris as president. We'll see on the debate stage tomorrow. Vice President Harris knows that women should have the ability to make their own decisions. And she's been fighting for our freedoms for years. From her time as Attorney General to US Senate, and now as Vice President, Kamala Harris has been an unequivocal champion for reproductive freedom. As Attorney General of California, she worked to help keep reproductive health care providers safe. As Senator, Vice President Harris sounded the alarm on the then Supreme Court nominee Kavanaugh and supported legislation to counter state attacks on reproductive health care. Now as Vice President, she's helping Biden-Harris administration's response to Trump's overturning of Roe versus Wade. I want to conclude with a personal story because, as I said, this is very personal to me. When I was first running for political office, I used to tell the story of my mother-in-law. In the 1930s, my mother-in-law was a little girl, the 6th of 6 children, when her mother became pregnant. She was in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Her mother became pregnant with a 7th child. The family learned that the child would be stillborn and the mother would likely die in childbirth. But this was the 1930s in Scranton, and you can imagine what happened. My mother-in-law's mother died in childbirth. The baby was stillborn. She had no choice. There were no choices offered to her. I used to tell that story as though it were antediluvian, that it could never happen again. And yet now, as a result of Donald Trump and this corrupt, corrosive Supreme Court, it can happen again, and we're hearing the horror stories of women's choices and their choices being restricted. May we never go back to those days. Please, I'm imploring everyone to make sure that we lift Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, because they will care about our reproductive health. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce my friend, Senator Sharif Street, the chair of the Democratic Party for Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dean. We appreciate the work that you're doing, and we understand the magnitude of what's at stake in front of us. You know, Vice President Harris said it best, that Donald Trump is an unserious man, but the consequences of his presidency are so serious. You know, it seems like, I know for many of us, people stop me all the time and say, why won't he just go away? You know, and to those folks out there, look, it's not that simple. We have to do some work to get him to go away. I sometimes liken it to like America stepped into some orange toe fungus, and it just keeps coming back. That being said, the consequence, while we make light of him because he is an unserious person, the consequences are very serious. When we look at what he has proposed, there are serious implications there. One unserious moment with serious consequences that I'll point out was during the Republican National Convention, where J.D. Vance was sort of waxing on, trying to sound folksy, talking about his Meemaw, and how Meemaw had so many guns, loaded guns. She would leave a loaded gun in the drawer, and she would forget where it was. She would get another loaded gun, and she would leave it in the kitchen. She would get another loaded gun and leave it in the car, another in the barn, and so forth, and so forth. He said at some point, it seemed like she had lost 14 or 15 loaded guns, but she could always go down and get another one. And he talked about how he wanted to preserve the culture that allowed folks to have all these weapons and literally lose loaded weapons. Well, to J.D. Vance and to Donald Trump, that may seem folksy and fun. But in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where people can buy firearms almost in an unfettered way, it's not so fun to people across, and it is not so fun. There was a child that found, in North Philadelphia, where I represent, that found a loaded gun, and you all know the story, many of you. That child thought it was a toy, played with it, and killed a sibling. And now those parents have one child forever traumatized and another one dead, and that family will never be altered. For children who are at Columbine, who died and hid, those who both died and those who lived, they will never be the same. For the people that were trying to celebrate at the Pulse nightclub, where folks had loaded guns and unfettered access to firearms caused those people who were out for a night of fun, primarily targeting the LGBT community, it wasn't fun. For the people in Buffalo, where they walked in with a mass shooting and began to shoot up folks targeting African Americans, it wasn't fun. For the people at the Tree of Life Synagogue here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh, where the largest act of Jewish hate ever happened, where folks used an AR-15 and they shot up and killed so many people, it wasn't fun. I'll tell you, to my staff folks, when a firearm went through the office, my district office, and people talked about it, it wasn't fun for the staff who had to return to work there. For many of my staff members who have lost, and constituents who have lost relatives to gun violence that happens on a day in and day out basis, it wasn't funny. It's not fun. And I will say, on a personal level, for a person who, as many of you out there know, on July 4th, 2021, when there was a mass shooting in West Philadelphia at 60th Street, where 105 shots fired out at a celebration of the birth of America, what more American event could there be? A block party where people were celebrating Salahuddin Mahmoud Lala, as we called him in the family, when our family lost Lala in a mass shooting, and 5 other people were shot. The guy did 10 shootings in Philadelphia that day, 105 shots fired in less than 2 minutes. Police were on site, but because he had a weapon of war, the police who were on site couldn't do anything to stop him because he fired over 105 shots in less than 2 minutes. And Lala is forever gone, and our family is forever altered. It's not funny, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And Donald Trump's first act in what he would do in the second term was to select J.D. Vance, who wanted to advance this at their very convention. Contrast that with Kamala Harris, who selected Governor Tim Walz, and Governor Walz, understanding the power of weapons, having served this country honorably for multiple decades, understood that holding weapons of war were not something that we needed in our community, and as a governor in Minnesota, he got rid of them. Kamala Harris has worked to get guns off the streets and to keep people safe as a district attorney. She's worked to keep people safe as an attorney general. She's worked as a vice president to pass some of the first comprehensive gun laws in decades, and she understands it and she gets it. And that while Donald Trump is an unserious person, the consequences of his presidency would be serious, and for many of us in communities that are impacted by gun violence, which is an expanding map of America, life and death. She selected Governor Walz because she wanted a person who understood the seriousness of carrying a weapon of war. She wanted a person who understood the seriousness of governing people. She wanted someone who understood what it was like, and our next speaker understands that as well. He also served this country honorably. He's also a governor that has the responsibility of keeping people safe. He's also a person who's had to respond to shootings and disasters. He is a person who has led with distinction, and I'm so honored that we have the governor with us today. I'm so honored that Governor Westmore has joined us, and he will join us now. I present to some and introduce to others the governor of Maryland, Westmore.
Good afternoon. I first want to give a deep sense of gratitude and thanks to my friend Senator Street and Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership that far transcends the Commonwealth. And also to my friend Congresswoman Dean, I just want to say thank you as well. for just being such a visionary and such a true leader on Capitol Hill at a time when we need it more than ever before. So bless you and thank you. And it's good being here in Pennsylvania. It's actually good being back in Pennsylvania. When I was just entering into my teenage years, I was actually sent away to a military school here in Pennsylvania, just down off 76, called Valley Forge, where I ended up actually finishing my education. And it was a place that I actually joined the Army. I joined the Army when I was 17 years old, and it was coming right out of Valley Forge. And I know that when I first joined the Army, that there was a basic mantra that we understood, that I learned first at Valley Forge, and then I continued on with the Army, and that is the basic idea of mission first and people always. And it's nice to know, and the reason that I'm here is because we have a presidential nominee and a vice presidential nominee who live that, who abide by it, who they know that's the standard that we have for each and every one of us, that it is mission first and that it is people always. And I know there are a multitude of different reasons why we are going to be out here to support the vice president to make sure that Kamala Harris becomes the next president of the United States. We talk about ideas of how basic freedoms are on the line. We talk about the basic idea that that conversation about a woman's future should be between her and her doctor, and also that difficult conversation about reproductive health should be between a woman and her doctor and nobody else. We talk about the fact that we have to make sure that we have common sense gun laws that are keeping people safe in our streets, keeping people safe in their neighborhoods, keeping people safe in their communities. But I also want to talk a little bit about something else, and that's the economic agenda. Because in this race, we have one candidate who is focusing on building pathways and prosperity for all, and not just some. That in this race, we have a nominee who is focusing on making sure we are building pathways to work and wages and wealth for all in our communities and not just some. That in this race, we have a candidate who's creating a society where renters can be homeowners and where we can actually have an opportunity for families to be able to own more than they owe, to be able to pass something off to their children besides debt. A candidate is actually focusing on wealth creation and making sure that that does not just become a punchline for some communities. Because when it comes to building economic prosperity for more people, the contrast that we are going to see tomorrow night is going to be very, very clear. And that's not based on speculation, that's not based on partisan talking points, that is exclusively based on facts, and that is exclusively based on the ideas that the candidates have already put out for themselves. Because with Vice President Harris, we see an economic plan, and with the former President Donald Trump, we see the Project 2025 agenda. Let's break down what both of those two things are showing us about what their vision for this country is. I'm here in Pennsylvania because the facts tell us that the decision that is going to be made here in the state of Pennsylvania is going to have a very direct impact on the people of my state as well. That so much of this election is going to run through a state that I spent much of my childhood in, and a place that is going to help to carry the banner about, are we going to defend our freedoms in this moment? Because the former president wants to undermine collective bargaining rights that have helped over 300,000 workers in the state of Maryland alone to be able to unionize. And the vice president, Kamala Harris, supports unions, and she stands with our workers. Always has, always will. That the former president wants us to roll back policies that guard against unfair appraisal values in historically redlined neighborhoods. And where historically redlined neighborhoods, and you look at unfair appraisal values, those have been some of the greatest wealth thefts that we have seen in our nation's history. Versus the Vice President, Kamala Harris, wants to prioritize housing as a way to help to narrow the racial wealth gap and to create new pathways to prosperity for everyone. Because if you can have an inclusive economy, you are going to have a growing economy. Economies prosper when more people are participating. And that's the vision the vice president has. That the former president wants to increase costs for families by around $4,000 a year by slapping a sales tax on things like gas and food and medicine. While the vice president, Kamala Harris, wants to lower the cost of living for American families by raising wages and by expanding the child tax credit. These are not partisan talking points. These are their words. These are their policies, and these are facts. That the former president has been clear when you look at Project 2025, that he will give tax breaks to billionaires in the hope that it trickles down. But the vice president, Kamala Harris, wants to use a tax policy to support our small business owners, to support our entrepreneurs, to support our MBEs and our WBEs, our women-owned businesses, so people can turn ideas into jobs and turn jobs into legacy-building prosperity. The former president wants to gut the Department of Education and funding for K-12 education. And the vice president wants to build an education system where we teach our kids how not just to be employees, but how to be employers. Knowing that the true baseline and platform for American growth and prosperity, it runs through our public schools. And our ability to have the kind of country where everyone has that chance to be able to grow and thrive, it means we must have the gold standard of public school systems in this country. So, I do want to be clear. The vice president will defeat Donald Trump in the debate tomorrow. She will be successful. And I don't think there is or should be any doubt about that. But more importantly, it's not just about her winning a debate. And frankly, it's not the fact that she's going to win a debate or election because the opponent is weak. It's because her policies are strong. It's because she has a vision and she has a set of values that's asking this country to be better. That's demanding and saying that everybody who is going to be involved is going to have their fingerprints on the future of this country. And it means making America great again. It means showing that America should be big enough for all of us to play our part. And the reason that I am so confident that she is going to do that is because I've seen her in action. You know, I know that when I was in the military, we learned a basic idea that I never learned anything about anybody in times of ease. If you ever want to learn anything about anybody, watch them when times were tough. Watch them when it was hard. Watch them when the heat got turned up. And that'll tell you everything you need to know about them. And I got a chance to see that. I got a chance to see that on the early mornings of March 26th when a ship that was the size of 3 football fields slammed into one of the most iconic bridges in our state. A bridge that is nearly 2 miles long, that was now collapsed at the bottom of the Patapsco River. I got a chance to see it when, in the early hours of that morning, we realized that 13% of my economy was now shut down. That thousands of workers now no longer had a job. And there were 6 individuals who were fixing potholes that night, who are now missing. And one of the first calls that I got started with 3 words. Gov, it's Kamala. I know you spoke with the president, and we're with you every step of the way. And she has been. I cannot imagine having to lead or navigate that crisis with better partners than I had with President Biden and Vice President Harris. She's a fighter. She understands what it means to work together. She understands what it means to be mission first and people always. She understands what it means to leave no one behind. In this moment, we have the leader that we need, and her name is Kamala Harris. And so I'm excited for the debate that'll take place tomorrow night, but more importantly, I'm excited to get to work. Because the thing that we know, that we also learned, is that we count our days backwards in the military, and we've got 56 days and a wake-up left. 56 days and a wake-up until Election Day. And we're not going to waste one of them. Because the stakes of this election could not be higher. So I'm grateful to be here today. But importantly, I'm grateful for the future that we're going to work on together to be able to preserve for the future of our country. And so with that, I know we'd be honored to take any questions from the media as well.
Governor, Pennsylvania polling shows a dead heat for the White House between Trump and Harris. What does Harris have to do on the debate stage tomorrow night to lessen the margin?
Well, I think we're seeing that in many places around the country. And I think what the Vice President is going to do tomorrow night is what the Vice President has continued to do over these past weeks, which is continue to take the case to the American people, which is going out to every single part of not just the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but every part of this country, and showing that if we can have an inclusive economy, one that actually focuses on supporting our small businesses and supporting our entrepreneurs, if we can have an economy that know that we have to invest in things like childcare and the child tax credit, because you cannot have an economy that disincentivizes work and disincentivizes people to get back into the workforce. If we could have a country that actually is respected on a global stage, that I think that's the hope and the vision that the people of not just the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but the people of this country are going to believe in. So I think the thing that we are going to see for the next 56 days in a wake up from the Vice President, from Governor Walz, and from this entire army of folks who are going to be right there with them, is continue to give the forward-facing vision for what this country can be, and continue giving a forward-facing vision for what's going to be required and who's going to be required in order for us to accomplish that. And the answer for that, frankly, is everybody.
Governor, what does Vice President Harris need to say on the debate stage tomorrow to win over those key undecided voters?
I think for many of the undecided voters, truthfully, it's not even just the voters who are trying to decide between the two candidates. It's the voters who are skeptical of the larger political system. It's the voters who we need to come out. Because in many ways, this election is not going to be determined on how people vote. This election will be determined by people who choose to vote and people who choose not to. And so I think the thing that she is going to be able to articulate and share is why it is so necessary for people to be a part of this process. That I think one of the greatest dangers that we have seen from the former president is it's causing so much noise and chaos that I think it's actually added to the level of skepticism that people feel about the system, that people feel about an ability to make things work for them and their families. And I think that the vision that the Vice President is going to articulate is one that says that even if people are skeptical, that we understand that. And even if people are frustrated by what oftentimes they're seeing, which is I think Congressman, you said it best, it's almost dystopian view, this isolationist view, this separatist view from what the country is and what the country hopes to be. I think that this is going to be the moment when the Vice President says, what we're asking for is that we can believe that we can be a better and a brighter and a bigger country because we're going to have everybody involved in it. And here's our vision of what that's going to mean for you and your individual family.
Governor, should former President Donald Trump say something incendiary, something about her race, about her gender, how should the Vice President respond to that? Should she call him a convicted felon to his face? How does she respond to Trump going low?
I don't think anyone should be surprised when the former president says something that's incendiary or something that is off-putting or misogynistic or racist. I mean, I think this has been a pretty consistent thread. So I don't think this is not going to be a shock to anybody tomorrow. I think that the Vice President is not going to spend her time fact-checking Donald Trump. I don't think that's a useful exercise. I think what she is going to do is spend her time presenting her vision for what the future of this country is. Because the hope is that in all this, for everyone who's going to be watching this debate tomorrow, my ask, frankly, is just simple. When you're listening to two people articulate their visions, do you see yourself included? Do you see yourself and your family being thought about? Do you see yourself and your family and your neighborhood and your community at the forefront of that vision? So while the former president will probably spend his time making truths and adding, trying to add gas to larger fires, I think people will see them and their families included in the vision that the Vice President is laying out, and that's why I feel confident that she's going to be able to bring people on board of her vision tomorrow night.
Governor, hi, Ali Novello with CBS News. So Republicans have criticized Vice President Harris for avoiding the press. Do you think she's making enough of an effort to talk to reporters? Do you think she should be doing more?
I think that the Vice President's campaign is going on, 40 days? And if you look at the combination of both press engagements that she has had, but also engagements with real people, I think it's been pretty remarkable what you see what her campaign has been able to build in just a matter of weeks. I think for the remainder of the time for Election Day, she is going to spend time engaging the press. She's going to spend tomorrow night on a debate stage with the former president. She's going to continue to spend time in neighborhoods all over this country, and not just in our urban areas. I mean, even just across this past week, where she was, down in Southwest Pennsylvania, she was down in rural Georgia. She is going to go anywhere and everywhere to be able to make her case to the American people, and that will include speaking to the press. And so, I think over the process of these next weeks, she is going to find multiple different ways, multiple different means, and multiple different opportunities to be able to make her case to the American people.
Got time for one more. Mark, are you going to close us?
Thank you so much, Allison. Actually, this question is for Senator Street, unfortunately. We saw that according to the state records, party registration is down over 50,000 voters here in Philadelphia from the 2020 primary to this year. What have you seen over the summer that suggests that Philadelphia County is trending closer to what we're seeing nationally, where there are higher registration numbers among voters of color?
Well, a couple things. One, I will say this, during the period of, there are people becoming independents, but in general elections, they're voting with Democrats. During the period of time that people keep talking about the registration edge, in 2022, people talked about registration edges in polls, and they said we're in real trouble. But we elected Governor Shapiro, we elected John Fetterman, we flipped the state house, we added seats in the state senate, and the first time in almost 100 years, probably over 100 years, the majority of our congressional district became Democrats. Then in 23, I got the same similar question, and in 23, they said we were in trouble. It was a red year, and our registrations weren't trending where we needed to. But we won all four of our statewide judicial races. We added seats. We added county commission seats that we had, and we defended all the places we needed to, and won school board races across the Commonwealth. And now in 2024, we're hearing it. So if the trend continues the way it's been, I'm okay with it. The fact that reality is Philadelphia has a significant independent voting population. The Republicans are now a third party in Philadelphia. We can't forget that, as Philadelphia City Council has 14 Democratic members, 2 Working Family Party members, and 1 Republican. So, but those working family independent voters who are registered independents in many cases, they are to the left of the Democratic Party, and I don't see them voting for Donald Trump, and I don't see them voting for McCormick. They're going to vote for the Harris Walz ticket, and they're going to vote for Bob Casey, because the independent voter in Philadelphia is left of the Democratic Party, not right.
I have a question for Congresswoman Dean. Richard Chambers from Virgin Media News in Ireland. You brought your mandate for leadership 2025 with you. What message do you think it would send to the world from America if there is another Trump presidency, and if the Project 2025 agenda is enacted?
Well, and one of the reasons I brought this Project 2025 is it's not just the blueprint for the future, the very dark future that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance promised. Much of this has already been enacted. Think of the Dobbs decision. Think of the control of the Supreme Court and what impact that has already had on us. Think of what they want to do in terms of banning books, not banning assault weapons. The message to the world, I think, would be very dark. And I serve on Foreign Affairs Committee as well as Judiciary Committee. And I talk to our counterparts around the globe. They're very worried for a second Trump presidency. So I'm confident, and I think we are all confident, that Kamala Harris will be elected. Donald Trump will be defeated. But what worries me is his minions. And those, some of them are my very colleagues in Congress, how they are sowing the seeds of bigotry, of othering, of making sure they tear down faith in our institutions. Just as you see Mr. Trump now, he knows he's losing this election. And what is he doing? Back to his old playbook of time after time, when he fears he's losing, he's saying to people, if I lose, it's because they stole it from me. There's no evidence of that. So this would send a shudder through the world. World leaders are watching. And that's why I'm so doggone proud of President Biden, and Kamala Harris because they have shown themselves to be the indispensable nation in the very crucial, critical things that are going on around the world. This will not come to play, but I bring it to warn people. Imagine they want to monitor menstrual cycles, abortions, they identify women as postmenopausal or menopausal. It's a very dark, dark place that these people would take us. I also want to just comment on the fact that where we are, and I thank you, Governor, for being here. This is the birthplace of democracy. There's a reason you are here. There's a reason the governor has come here, and the senator serves here, because this is the birthplace of democracy. Pennsylvania will once again be the keystone state to this election. We were the keystone state historically because of our governmental strength, our economic strength, our political strength. Pennsylvania will be the one, again, that makes the difference and turns away from this darkness. The contrast couldn't be greater. A dark past that he wants to go back to, or a very bright future for everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.